Kennedy. And if you're a random person who's watching this right now, what we're trying to do is figure out how to make interesting content that people would actually listen to, because I feel like Noah before the flood saying, watch out, the world's going to flood and we're all going to die. But this has to do with all of our urban environments and this whole thing about sustainability right now. Oh no, we're all going to die because the world's going to end because we're not sustainable, blah, blah, blah. Well, sustainability is a good thing. However, it has nothing to do with what we think it really has to do with. The whole green thing, it's kind of a joke. It's like, yeah, there's only part of it that has to do with greenhouse gases and all that kind of stuff, but the majority of it just has to do with harmonious living with the environment and the proper use of natural materials, and not being too excessive. I guess temperance is a great principle in green building, as it were. And so there will always be haves and have-nots, and that is okay, because that's not necessarily the point of life. And so this is going to talk about the $1 million home then and now. So if you are just randomly watching this, well, once again, just I'm going to go through some of the script stuff. Then we're going to make a video if it's not completely stupid. So let us know on this little behind the scenes action of what we might actually do for our film or our little content stuff, because we keep being told by our YouTube mentor that we are an entertainment company. And it's like, I was thinking I was an education company, but no one's going to be educated if they aren't entertained first. And I guess the interesting thing when you look at a classroom, holy cow, I haven't thought of that before. When you look at a classroom, it's set up the same way as a stage is. So you have a professor, a teacher, or whoever at the front of the audience, and the audience is back there. And in drama, right, in the Greek theaters and that type of stuff, you would play out narratives and stories and tell stories that way. And that is how knowledge was disseminated, communicated, and transferred from generation to another generation. And that still hasn't changed. And so what's interesting is on the back side of this camera, you on the other side of this who are watching this right now, it's like as if you are in the seat right with me and we're having a conversation, and I need to present to you a drama. So it isn't just education, it's just the transfer of knowledge through entertainment. And I suppose that's what education actually is, huh? So the $1 million home then versus now. Dun dun dun. That actually sounds kind of interesting. I mean, think about that. Okay, so seriously, if you're like in California, in some fancy place in California, and you still have your double wide from 1962, it's like you could sell that for $1 million super easy, because that's how much the land's worth, and then someone can tear it down and do something else. And so, yeah, double wide in Southern California is worth $1 million, whereas in the middle of Nebraska, you can probably buy a pretty nice home for $1 million. But then versus now, 100 years ago, I wonder what that was like. So here we go. Hook. Let's see if you're hooked. Are you hooked on this? We're going to do 4 different hooks. Tell me which one you like the best, huh? This house was built in 1916. This one, 1923. 1923, come on. Read better, moron. This house was built in 1916. And this house, 2023. Both cost the same, $1 million. But only one still feels like $1 million. We're not just talking about square footage, we're talking about soul. Let's take a walk through time and see what $1 million used to mean and what it means now. Let's take a walk through time and see what $1 million used to mean and what it means now. That isn't depressing. Holy cow, inflation. And okay, you want to hear something really stupid, Kennedy, this for you? Just when you look at inflation and $1 million, I remember 25 years ago, 30 years ago, so yeah, still in the 90s, like being so impressed that someone had $1 million house. It's like, woo. And $1 million nowadays can't even buy you a doghouse. That's what's crazy. $1 million isn't what it used to be, not at all, and that's just subject to inflation. I have no idea what happens in time, but yeah, $1 million is nothing. Nothing. Let's take a walk through time and see what $1 million used to mean and what it means now. Let's take a walk through time and see what $1 million used to mean and what it means now. That was a little too fast, wasn't it? How about let's take a walk through time and see what $1 million used to mean and what it means now. We're not talking about square footage, we're talking about soul. We're not talking about square footage, we're talking about soul. Okay, anyway, that's kind of a fun hook, huh? Fun little grab your attention thing, maybe. How about this house was built in 1910 and this one was built last year. Both cost the same, but only one will still feel beautiful in another 100 years. So what changed? Let's take a look, and it's not what you think. Okay, that's kind of cool too. This house was built in 1910. This house, I can actually pull it up. I can draw it. This house was built in 1910. This house, last year, both cost the same, but only one will still feel beautiful in another 100 years. What changed? Let's talk about it, and it may not be what you think. Okay, that's pretty fun. How about number 3? This house tells a story. This house tells a story. That one tells you what was trending on Pinterest 3 years ago. so true. Sorry, I was reading that for the first time. One is built with care, the other is built with comps in mind. Both cost $1 million, but one feels priceless. I like that. This house tells a story. This house, that one tells you what was trending on Pinterest. This house, even though it's not there right now, this house tells a story. This house tells you what was trending on Pinterest 3 years ago. One was built with care. One was built with care and the other with comps in mind. One was built with care, the other with comps in mind. Both of them cost $1 million. But that feels good. But one feels priceless. Both of them cost $1 million, but one feels priceless. I want to do that one again. This house tells a story. This house tells what was trending on Pinterest 3 years ago. One is built with care. The other was built with comps in mind. Both cost $1 million, but one feels priceless. That's kind of fun. Okay, this is the last one on this one. This home was built by hand for a family. This one was built by a formula for the market. Both are $1 million home, but one feels like it was made to last. Okay, interesting. This home was built by hand. Yep, this not built, we're going to say crafted. This home was crafted by hand for a family, for people. This home was assembled. Yeah, this one was assembled for the market and resell. Both are $1 million home, but only one feels like it was made to last. Okay, well, those are the kind of intros. Let's see what's next. As a traditional architect, my gosh, I'm yawning so much right now. That's stupid. Okay, as a traditional architect, I walk through a lot of new homes. Big ones, expensive ones, shiny ones, and I often leave thinking, why didn't it feel better? Yep, and and I just, I keep, and you just have the process. You're always evaluating, you're always analyzing, and you're thinking to yourself, and why doesn't it feel better? Why does it feel right? Why doesn't it feel right? Then I visited a home 100 years ago. Something clicks. The scale is smaller, the ceiling's lower, the trim is not necessarily simpler. The trim is better proportioned, but the space feels whole. As a traditional architect, I walk through a lot. As a traditional architect, I walk through a lot of homes, and sometimes, big ones, shiny ones, small ones, all sorts, built over the last 100 years. And sometimes you walk in, you're like, this is awkward. This doesn't feel right. And other times, like, yes. From 100 years ago, I walk into one of those old bungalows or an old ranch house that we're going to do an addition to. Something just feels right. The materials, the ceilings are lower. The frames, the door frames, how it's crafted, how it's made. Everything just seems to feel right. The trim is properly proportioned. The space feels whole. Anyway, I guess that's the reality of that. Next page. Okay, you're going to be bored to tears as you have to listen to all of this, huh? No, you won't. It's going to be awesome. Oh man, I spilled water on it. I just saw that Yeti was shown. Is Yeti going to get a shout out? The materials age well, the rooms breathe, the home remembers you. That's kind of fun. The home remembers you. That's the kind of $1 million home we used to build. The rooms breathe, the home remembers you. That's the kind of $1 million home we used to build. It's interesting because most of these homes didn't cost $1 million back in the day. So if we were to actually look at $1 million home back in the 1920s, 1910s, it would be a pretty extravagant, lush, beautiful home. It would be pretty impressive. Even the simple homes, what's interesting, and I think there's a story there too, and I don't know if we're doing it or not, but doing a $2,500 home in 1910 versus a $2.5 million home in 2025, and the difference. And so when we go into some of these old historic homes, rather than like remodeling the whole thing, all we're doing is putting on additions and then touching up some of the inside stuff. But because it's already embedded with so much character, it's like, yeah, we don't want to get rid of the character because all the machined things that we have now don't have the same amount of character. It's not like someone's on the end of a chisel and a hammer hammering these things or planing the wood or whatever. And so it's we do additions on traditional things. We remodel every 5 to 10 years the stuff that we build today. Why do we do that? Character. That's why we do that. Old stuff has character. All right. The materials, probably can't use that if I'm yawning while I'm saying it. Materials age well. The rooms breathe. The home remembers you. That's the kind of $1 million home we used to build. Okay. Voiceover with B-roll traditional, blah, 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 blah. Back then, $1 million wasn't just about luxury. It was about legacy. Oh, that's a fun little sentence. Back then, $1 million wasn't just about luxury. It was about legacy. Homes were designed to reflect values, permanence, welcome, dignity. I've always said, architecture is the physical manifestations of the values of the people who made it. I like permanence, welcome, and dignity. They followed classical rules of proportion. They had symbolic entryways. Even modest homes were carefully scaled and composed. And that is the truth. Even modest homes were carefully scaled and composed. Yes, even modest homes had very deliberate composition. You knew where you were in a home like this. Formal spaces near the entry, casual ones tucked behind. Walls gave rhythm. Hallways created anticipation. These homes didn't just look beautiful, They held life in a meaningful way. Compare that to a modern $1 million home. Everything is big, everything is open, everything is fast, but all for its features. Something is missing. It doesn't speak to you. It doesn't say, you belong here. It says, look at me. It says, look at me. I mean, that's really what it says. It's almost like we're building giant, it's the Las Vegas of home design, right? Big, flashy, everything else. So what changed? Why do we spend more money and get less soul? It's not that we forgot how to build. It's that we started building for different reasons. Yeah, yes and no. We used to build homes to express something. Now we build them to sell something. Oh, but I do like that. We used to build homes to express something, and now we build them to sell something. Huh. We used to build homes to express something, and now we build homes to sell something. We used to build homes to express something, and now we build homes to sell something. Say that 100 times. Yes. Why? And so, can you build a home today where you express something to sell something? It's like, can you make tradition the trend? Can we balance technology and tradition in a way that we sell beautiful, character-filled homes? Okay, a home is more than a product. It's a place of memory, protection, and identity. And when we stop designing for those things, we lose something deeper than aesthetics. The truth is, $1 million used to buy proportion, procession, quiet dignity. Now it buys volume, countertops, and square footage. One was made to hold generations. The other was made to hold attention for just long enough to click buy. And no matter how much we spend, a home built without story, a home built without character, a home built without proportion can never give you a sense of place. A sense of place can never give you a sense of place. Here's something most people miss. In this 100-year-old home, even the baseboard follows a hierarchy. The ceiling has a rhythm. The light was considered. Nothing is loud, but everything belongs. Good design isn't always obvious, but you feel it. It stays with you longer than any double height ceiling ever could. That's true. That's true. That's true. There's something about well-resolved spaces and really good design where all the parts and pieces actually create a harmonious composition that feels so much better than just open space and volume. And our priorities have shifted in a way that kind of make garbage. This house was built to last. The other? Only time will tell. What makes you feel something? The other, okay, one makes you feel something. The other makes you scroll past. If you want a home that still works in 100 years, don't just ask how big it is, ask how it feels and how it's composed. Because good design doesn't cost more, it just takes more care. You know what? There is some truth to that. There is absolutely some truth to that. So, home was built to last. The other, only time will tell. One makes you feel something. The other makes you scroll past. If you want a home that still works in 100 years, don't ask just how big it is. Don't just ask how big it is. Ask how it feels. Ask how it's composed. Because good design doesn't necessarily cost more. It just takes more care. In the next video, we'll look at a $250,000 home that holds more meaning than some mansions, and we'll show you why timeless design doesn't have to be expensive, just intentional. Okay, that should be interesting. I'd like to see that home myself because can't get anything for $250,000 now. Okay, so that's that. So, which hook did you like? Is this a home or a home? Is this a video that we could produce and someone would watch it or not? I have no idea. We're just gonna make it And it might be completely stupid, but it might be completely awesome. But in there, what we want to talk about, I really want to focus on is really how to embed character into a home in a timeless way so that homes tell a story, you tell a story, you're living your life in a story, and it becomes, I mean, when you're looking at that Up video where they go through this tiny little home and then all the Up video, the Up movie, and then all the homes next to it get demolished, he refuses to sell, all the skyscrapers come up right around him, and you have this tiny little home adjacent to and embedded into all of these other giant skyscrapers because the dude refused to sell, and that home has character, right? And so that Up house, it's a cartoon, but there's something about it where they go through that story sequence where she dies and he lives his life and stuff, and just a super quick little montage. And when you compress your life into a similar sort of narrative like that with your home, what's the story it tells? When you think of real estate as investment rather than a home or a community or a work of art, or telling your story, and you move over and over and over again, it's a subject that we should really think about more, because it's not just about real estate, it's about community, and it's about neighbors, and it's about the social fabric that ties us all together. And when we lose all that, we lose our soul. It's not just about money. Okay, so if you happen to randomly watch the previous two to this, what we're doing right now is actually just looking at some scripts. This is a little behind the scenes terms of just looking at some scripts of things that we can do to create some edutainment, a little bit of education that's entertaining, to hopefully get the message out that, hey, our environment actually matters. Hey, guess what? Living in really crappy places is a choice. Hey, we can do better than we actually do. And so what we're going to do is we're now going to look at why Gen Z can't buy homes. And it's not just the economy. So that is number, I should have done this on the previous ones. Number 3. Why Gen Z can't buy homes, and it's not just the economy. So what we want to do, if you have any feedback in terms of whether or not this sounds like an interesting video or not an interesting video, let us know. We're going to see what we come up with. This is the first time reading through this script, and let's go. Gen Z can't buy homes. And yeah, the market's insane, but you're basically trading a kidney for a 30-year mortgage with a view of a retaining wall. Yeah, it's kind of funny. But what if it's not just economics? What if the architecture is broken too? Yeah, and it's not just that, actually. What if the architecture is broken too? It's like, what if the building industry is broken too? It's interesting because they keep trying to come up with, when you go to these trade shows and all of these, like the Builder Show and new technologies, building technology. Building technology, let's improve this so we have better insulation and better green energy and better blah, 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 blah. The reality, building technology has been progressing forever. Like they went from clay bricks, Adobe stuff, to fire bricks, which they could build taller and more durable. And then they went to steel, and then they went to reinforced concrete and blah, blah, blah. But the crazy thing is when you go back and you look at all of that, it's about the craftsmanship of our built environment. And it starts with streets. It starts with street composition. And we get that wrong, everything else goes wrong. Okay, so I think, we need to come up with, okay, let's get a couple other hooks. I don't know if I like that particular hook because it's not entirely factual. And I don't know how interesting it is. Okay, so zoom in on a modern McMansion with 3-car garage. No front door inside. You ever seen those homes where it's you have this, let's say there's this idiotic giant gable, and you got big giant 3-car garage, and then you have a little door right there, and that's your front porch. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. There's my really cool kindergarten drawing. So This is not helping. I'm a traditional architect, and I think the one reason Gen Z can't buy homes is because we stopped building homes worth buying. We lost the starter home. That is true. We lost walkability. That is also true. We lost proportion, presence, and care, and now we wonder why people feel lost. Holy cow, that is truth bomb right there. I'm a traditional architect, and I think one of the reasons Gen Z can't buy homes is because we stopped building homes worth buying. That's the truth. I think one of the reasons Gen Z can't buy homes is because we built homes not worth buying. We stopped building homes worth buying. We lost the starter home. We lost the starter home. We lost walkability. We lost proportion, presence, and care. And we wonder why people feel lost. I love that, actually. I'm a fan of that particular hook. That hooked me, but I'm the idiot architect who just thinks that geeks out on this stuff, right? So, hook 3. In 1950, a single income could buy a modest house in a walkable neighborhood. Today, is that true? Not really. That one needs to change a little bit. You can go to 1920. I mean, okay, sort of in the 50s, but yeah, okay, 50, okay, we'll stick with it for now. Okay, so in 1950, a single home could buy a modest home in a walkable neighborhood. Today, you need 2 incomes, a miracle, and a tolerance for vinyl siding. Today, you need 2 incomes, a miracle, and tolerance for vinyl siding. This isn't just a financial shift, it's a total architectural departure. And that's the part no one's talking about. That's the truth. This isn't just a financial shift, it's an architectural shift. And that's the part no one's talking about. Okay. What was... Okay, here we go. Personal story. Clean camera standing in front of a humble, charming 1940s home. Okay, we need a story. This is not my story, and so we'll have to come up with a different story. My grandparents bought a house like this in the 50s. So the funny thing is I had 2 sets of grandparents, right? And so, yeah, when would they have bought those homes? My grandma, they bought a bungalow down on University Avenue. And I wonder if it's still there. But it's an old 1920s bungalow that they bought, I think probably 1965 or so. And then my other, yeah, they also built that in about 1960, probably. It was a super modernist home. My grandpa loved architecture, and both grandpas were doctors. One of them was all, just like, honestly, most dudes infatuated with technology, and so they built a very modernist style house, a modernist house. And the other one, my more traditional grandparents, who are of a different generation. So the later grandpa, sorry I'm going through all this, but this is important because it says interject a personal story, and so it says my grandparents bought a house like this in the 50s, and it's like, sort of. And so I'm just going through my grandparents and who bought a house when. And so my dad's parents were of they were pre-World War II people, meaning that they were in the throes of raising a family during the war, and they were born in the 1910, 1906, something like that, and so they were of that generation. My other grandparents, my mom's parents, were born in the late 20s, so 27, 28-ish, which means that is an 18-year, an almost 2-decade differential in living experience. And so when you look at the technological advancements that happened between those 2 generational groups, it's astounding. And so it makes a lot of sense that my dad's My dad's dad would buy something, a bungalow, a traditional home, all that type of stuff. He's of that older generation. Then my grandpa, he comes back from the war. He's all like, hey, this technology stuff is awesome, and is infatuated with modernism because that's all the craze and all the trend in the 50s and early 60s. And he builds a nice flat roofed home, which is interesting because there were still some really interesting. I mean, that home had memory. It really did. It had stories still. Yeah, we could talk about that sometime, but not here. So, my grandpa bought a house like this in the 50s. So the issue is both of them were doctors, so it's not really totally relatable. 2 bedrooms, solid brick, walkable neighborhood. So the bungalow house was 3 bedroom, I believe. I believe it was 3 bedroom with a small living room, kitchen on the side. Yeah. I remember playing in that house when I was a child, Legos, and the front porch. And we always came to town on the 4th of July, it seemed. And so we'd have a 4th of July party with my cousins that I only saw once a year when we'd come to town, and would have watermelon. My grandma always had watermelon. And that's what I remember. She had watermelon on the 4th of July, watching the parade in the front yard on the front porch. Front porches used to mean something. Front porches you would hang out in. And I remember that. And why? Why is the front porch different today than it used to be? One of the reasons is just general overall composition. The other is the streets aren't really worth sitting on anymore. And so street design is just as important as house design. Architecture are the walls of the street. If you think about your own house that you live in, if you have a blank room, just a square room, cover that room with a multiplicity of different materials and see how you feel in each one. See what dark paint's like versus light paint, what's trim versus not trim. Put in big giant foam blocks that have those pointy pyramids and see if you don't go crazy in 5 minutes. The walls of the streets are the buildings, and if we get the buildings wrong, it turns into a very stressful environment that we built for ourselves. Okay. They bought it on one income, raised a family there, stayed for decades. That's not really a personal story, so we need to figure out what that actually looks like. Today, Gen Z is looking at homes 3 times the size, but half as connected. There's no street life, no character, just a lot of walls, garage space, and space that doesn't feel like it means anything. So yeah, I mean the crazy thing, this actually has as much to do with street design as it does architecture, because the way we actually subdivide and develop land now, you cannot do traditional homes, and so it's impossible. We've made an impossible environment. Do you want to know why? It's like, sure, we could explain why. It's like, before, just really quick, tell me if there's any validity in actually talking about this or trying to do some sort of movie or film. And so what happened, the way cities used to be built, you'd have a primary street, primary corridor, and then you'd have these secondary streets and tertiary streets, kind of like what we do today, and then maybe little alleys that went through, and then a larger street. And so this would be like all the commercial stuff. You'd have an alley that goes through, then you'd have a large lot and a large lot, or maybe 2 lots, and then you'd have these smaller lots in between. So you have some larger home. Oh man, what did I do? That was weird. And then small home, small home, small home. And the same thing would exist here. And so you have a larger home on the corner because corners were important, and then you'd have either a small alley or maybe not an alley, and maybe it just did that, and then you have homes. And so these homes would begin to, you just divide up the lots in ways where you maintain some sort of hierarchy within your urban fabric. And this is the way, man, this is a messy, I need to create a much better diagram if we're going to actually talk about this. This is stupid messy. But we could go city after city after city, pull it up on Google Earth and actually evaluate and analyze the historical core on these principles and show you how identical it is. But the variations are simple enough, and so the type is the same, meaning, and types are very important to understand when it comes to city building, civic building, and understanding the fundamental nature of human flourishing and civilization, really. But this is getting way too off the beaten path, and I know Kennedy's over there like, oh my gosh, Clayton, shut up. I get you, I hear you, but I guess what I'm trying to say is why can't Gen Z afford a house anymore? It's funny because now when we do subdivisions and all this stuff, we have your main thoroughfare and then another main thoroughfare, and then someone comes in here and does some sort of street subdivision that looks like that with some cul-de-sacs, and then another person comes and does this, buys this plot of land and does the same sort of thing, and then another person does this. And so there's no more connectivity. It's not really walkable except just in your little sphere. You can't get out here and walk around anywhere. I want to go to my neighbor right here. Oh, I have to go a mile around to get to my neighbor right there, even though our backyards may share, but there's probably some river or whatever. And so anyway, this way of building and developing, this is incredibly expensive relative to this way. This has more options for variety. This has a single home type. 1 acre lots, half acre lots, quarter acre lots, whatever it is. And they all look exactly the same. There's no variety, there's no interest. It's all the same. It's the mixed subdivision. They've tried to make it efficient and process it in a way that, package it in a way that's super sellable, easy for banks to loan on, because comps and direct market or comparative market analyses and all that types of things. That's one of the reasons why. But when you do something like this, the comps are a lot more hard, so banks have a harder time lending. And the crazy thing is back in the day, look at the loans. You could only get a loan for like 10 years or less. And so a lot of people, they bought homes, and meaning you bought homes. How much did a Sears home cost? $2,500. What was the salary in any given year? Maybe 20,000, maybe 10,000. But you could, within a couple years, save up enough money to buy a house. Can't do that anymore. It's all about the money. And so getting comparative market analysis on a corner lot with a house that's 3 times larger than the one next door, that's hard. That's a hard sell for banks, even though that makes for a great walkable street and a great community. And having a mix of stuff all next to each other in terms of housing type, housing product, carriage houses behind where young people can still be integrated into the neighborhood but don't feel like they are like completely isolated or separated into, here's where the poor single people go. Here's what it's like, all the compartmentalization. It's like you're taking your peas, carrots, and everything, or taking a stir fry, all the vegetables, separating separately and just eating one vegetable at a time, rather than having the whole composition together. I mean, seriously, it's a pizza tastes a lot better when you have everything on it rather than just being, well, I guess some people just like cheese pizza, which is good. There's plenty of food analogies you can do in terms of like a delicious salad in traditional neighborhoods and that type of stuff. But there's a lot that goes into why Gen Z can't buy a home, and it does. Once mortgages came up, the VA system, that changed everything. And yeah, you could just, all of a sudden it went from 10 years to 15 years, then to 30-year mortgages. And all of a sudden, it's not how much the house costs, it's how much can someone afford in a given month. And so the supply demand curve, that just continued to shift up in terms to max out the overall potential. Then when all the women went into the workforce and you had 2 incomes, that continued to increase the overall trajectory of the cost. Because once you lower interest rates, the values of the homes can go up because the monthly cost is less. And so that's how we artificially inflate or increase the value of our real estate investment. Those are just some straight up factual things. And so we've done it to ourselves, and we need to come up with ways to undo that. And it's kind of difficult. So Let's get back to the script. I'm going to just read it. My grandparents bought a house like this in the 50s, which is not true, blah, 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 but I'll read it anyway. 2 bedrooms, solid brick, walkable neighborhood. It had a real front porch, hardwood floors, and a sense of presence, even in its simplicity. They bought it on one income, raised a family there, stayed for decades. It wasn't big, but it was enough, and it felt like home. Actually, yeah, we could go to University Avenue and actually take a look at that home, because that actually does exist. That does exist. My dog is walking around below me. It's funny. Come here, Pumpkin. Nah, he doesn't want to be seen on camera. So today Gen Z is looking at homes 3 times the size, but half as connected. There's no street life, no character, just a lot of walls, garages, and space that doesn't feel like it means anything. True. Back in the early 20th century, you built homes that were modest but beautiful. Sears sold kit homes you could literally assemble yourself like IKEA, but with dignity. You know, it's interesting, like comparing that with the assembly we do today, because it's still assembling a home, but there was a craft associated with the assembly of that home versus today. Post-World War II, the GI Bill gave an explosion of starter homes, not glamorous, but they worked. A street presence that didn't scream, I was designed by an algorithm. I mean, some of it worked, because that's when we need to explore that slightly better, because I don't know if that's entirely true. Then came zoning codes that outlawed walkable neighborhoods in half the country. No more duplexes, no more corner stores, no more fun. Yes, that probably does need to be mentioned, because it's such a critical component to it. And so I don't know how you do it in a storytelling way that's not completely boring. So if you're on the other side of this camera and you're looking at this, and it's like, guys, if you want a better environment, we have to do it. But unfortunately, you have to slog through the sludge of boring reality that generated the environment in which we live, in order to understand the principles that we need to generate environments that we want to live. We have set up the system, and we can change it. Somewhere along the way, we started building homes that said, "Welcome to my garage. The humans live behind somewhere." Okay, that's funny. Welcome to my garage. The humans live behind somewhere. I like it. So yes, Gen Z is priced out, but here's the kicker. Even if they could afford today's homes, they might not even want them. Because when you design a home like a spreadsheet, it kind of lives like one. A house used to be an expression of culture. Today, it's an expression of FICO scores and Pinterest trends. We stopped designing homes with thresholds, with sequences. We stopped designing for real life. We started designing for real estate. And Gen Z, they're not asking for mega mansions. They're asking for small homes they can actually live in, actually afford, and actually love. A quiet street, a real porch, a place that doesn't feel like it's yelling at them. But what is it yelling? What is it yelling? Here's something you don't learn on Zillow. Beauty isn't about budget. This baseboard molding costs about $2 more per linear foot than the builder grade stuff, but it feels like someone thought about it. You know, that's interesting. That sound, that's wood, real wood, the kind that doesn't flinch when you lean on it emotionally. Gen Z can't afford homes, but maybe the bigger problem is we've stopped building homes worth affording. We don't need bigger houses, we need better houses. Homes with warmth, rhythm, scale, and story. This isn't about going back in time, it's about learning what worked and building it forward. I like that. In the next video, we're going to show you what modern, walkable, affordable neighborhood could look like, and no, it doesn't require a time machine or a trust fund. Just a little less drywall and a little more soul. Honestly, that's not too shabby. I think this is super, super compelling. If you do, great. Put a comment and say, yeah, we could do something like that. But if you don't, you're like, man, that's boring. Well, you know what? Then we won't. But we'll probably make the video anyway. But in the end, this is the stuff that actually matters. This is the reason why you're stuck on a freeway all the time. This is the reason why neighborhoods just cycle through trends over and over again, and why stuff in the past still feels timeless. This is why when I go to someone's house that was built anything post 70s, we remodel the whole thing. We gut it and we remodel it and try to make it cute. Anything prior to 1930, we just do additions. Maybe tweak a couple things. We repaint, we touch up, we try to refresh, but we don't just tear the thing down and try to start over because there's too much character embedded in it. That's my personal experience. So anyway,